I'm Colleen Laffey, and I'm a camera operator.
This is Art, the podcast where we get up close and personal with women from around the world of visual arts. I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 2, Episode 26. My guest this week is the camera operator Colleen Laffey, whose credits include Love is Blind, World's Toughest Race, Eco Challenge Fiji, American Grit, Capture, MasterChef, Jersey Shore, The Bachelorette, Kings of Pain, Are You the One, and Motor Maidens. She has, she says, become obsessed with photography. It's her drug of choice and gets her in her flow state when she's shooting. Colleen was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1960, the oldest of 3 children. She has a brother Marty and sister Maureen. Her mother Dale was a homemaker and her father Marty a bank loan officer. Colleen's childhood was largely spent outdoors, and when it came time to graduate from high school, she chose to attend the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, where she graduated with an associate degree in photography. From there, she began working in outdoor recreation as a still photographer, a river guide, a video kayaker, ski instructor, and ski patrol. She worked for 4 years at WVPB, and chance opportunity to run camera on a large show changed the course of her career. And at the age of 44, she settled into the unscripted TV industry, becoming a sought-after camera operator. Colleen lives in Fayetteville, West Virginia, in a house that she designed, and in her spare time, she can be found mountain biking or whitewater kayaking. Colleen, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Well, our friend Gretchen Warthen said she's saved the life of at least one person she's tasked with shooting, as well as having a chase scene, which she never thought she would, and boating away from angry hippos in Africa. Her stories are amazing. She's always up for adventure, has never met someone who is not a friend, and has definitely been successful in a variety of men's-only worlds. Tell me how you guys met.
So I met Gretchen. I actually virtually met her before I physically met her, because when I started into the business, each woman was an island. And you would hear about these other islands off in the uncharted areas, but you would never run into each other. And so, I'd heard about Gretchen and I'd been in touch with her and, just back and forth on, via text or email and this and that. And then finally we worked together on Top Model, except that we didn't work together because I was night shift and she was day shift. So we were little islands passing each other on set.
How do you feel you have had any impact on the world that you've worked in cinematography?
Oh my goodness. I'll tell you what, the really cool thing is, like I said, when Gretchen started, when I started, it was not normal to see a female in a tech capacity. And every single job that I did, I was the only woman for quite some time. And once I had a chance to be in a position of deciding who was getting hired on in any way, I would always get as many women as possible to be hired on my shows.
That seems to be an ongoing battle, doesn't it, for women in the industry?
Yes. Yeah. So, and the funny thing is, especially starting out, like I would have to claw my way into a situation. And then, I should back up a little bit. So I went to school for photography and I really wanted to be a photographer. I absolutely loved and still love shooting pictures. So I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh and I had a job before graduation where I was working for a company called Format One, and it was a corporate focused production house that was doing multimedia slide production. So up to like 40 projectors. And so I got a job with them. And when I graduated, I didn't feel that I needed to look for a job because I had one. And at my portfolio review, this dude walks up to my table where I had my work set up. And he was wearing muddy boots and blue jeans and a t-shirt and a wool shirt and a baseball hat. And he walks up to me and he's like, "You want a job?" And I'm like, "Yeah, right, whatever." And so I called him up, and the job was shooting pictures of people on whitewater rafting trips.
Well, that would have been fun. Where was that in the world?
I was in Pittsburgh when I was, going to school when I had that job. And, I wasn't like, I don't have the temperament for the corporate world, let's just say. And so when this person came up to me and offered me a job actually shooting the camera, I was really intrigued. And I was like, I'm going to check this out. So I called him up, and it was springtime, which now I know what that means in this world. But at the time I didn't understand. And so he was like, "Okay, I'm doing tryouts at this location, meet there, at blah, blah, blah." So I drive to Albright, West Virginia. I take my camera, and it's myself and a few other people. And we are getting in a raft, and we're going to raft down to the rapid where the customer photos were taken. So I'd never been rafting. I'd never been camping, like none of that stuff. And so we get down there, and each of us is, shooting the pictures, and then the day wraps up, and we put all the stuff back in the raft, and we continue on to the end of the day. And I was like, this is cool. Like, I want to do this. And so then we went back to the lab, and we processed our film and made a proof sheet, and he looked at the proof sheets, and he offered me a job.
Were you getting the buzz for it just because of that thrill of adventure and shooting in risky situations?
Well, for me, it wasn't even so much the risky situation. It was the opportunity to be the person that was shooting the camera. Because the job that I had at the time, when I started at the company, I was delivering packages. This is in downtown Pittsburgh. So I was delivering packages to corporate offices, and I was also running their color Xerox machine. Now, this is 1980, 1981. So color Xerox was a new thing. Not, it's like it's impossible to like comprehend for people who are alive today who weren't alive back then that a Xerox machine was a specialized piece of equipment. And a color Xerox machine was an incredibly rare thing. And so I love that job because I could bop all over town. And then when I was doing Xerox jobs, I would do little art pieces on the Xerox machine. And I was just in heaven. Well, then I got promoted, and now my job was to sit in front of a little machine where I would type titles on slides for 8 hours. And I was miserable.
How did you break loose from that?
I took the job on the river.
Oh, that was the moment when you took the job on the river.
I quit that job, and I went down. I tried out for the job, and I got the job. And then I loaded my belongings into my 1971 Oldsmobile Cutlass, and I moved to Fayetteville, West Virginia. And I ended up having to live in my car because I couldn't find a place to rent. So I was living in a 71 Oldsmobile Cutlass and shooting 7 days a week.
And then what?
What followed? Oh, I finally found someone that would rent me a place. So I rented an apartment, and I just really honestly fell in love with the town. I fell in love with the culture. I fell in love deeper with the outdoors because when I was a little kid, I would always wander back. I grew up in the city, but the neighborhood that I lived in backed up to a woods that connected eventually to a slag dump and then eventually to the Monongahela River. And so when I was a little kid, I'd like wander back into the woods and just spend hours there. And now here I was getting paid to spend hours in the big woods.
Well, with this show, we like to go back to the start. So you've taken me there very nicely. It's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where you grew up in the 60s, a child of the 60s. Yes.
In the 60s.
Some would say that was the best decade ever.
Dude, I mean, come on. It's like, no seatbelts, no rules. I mean, there was a lot more freedom for kids back then.
And you're one of three children, aren't you? So where do you fit? You have a brother and a sister. Where do you fit?
I'm the oldest of three.
And your parents, Martin and Dale, Martin's a loan officer and your mother's a bookkeeper.
Yeah. Okay. So my dad worked at Mellon Bank and my mom was a homemaker, when I was a kid. And then she started doing the bookwork at a donut shop when I was a teenager. So, yeah. And my mom died of lung cancer when she was 65.
What do you remember of those earliest days and what life was like? Were you very much an outdoor child?
I was very much an outdoor child. And it's funny, like in retrospect, things make sense. At the time they didn't. But when I was born, I had like really screwed up eyesight. But back then they didn't test infants for eyesight. And it didn't even like click for me until one of my best friends had a child. And there he is in his little infant eyeglasses. And I'm like, So I had very, very bad vision. And it wasn't really discovered until I was in the first grade. So consequently, I was very socially awkward because I was clumsy and bumping into things and couldn't catch balls and, I literally couldn't see. But it wasn't caught until I was in first grade. So the funny thing is I learned how to read when I was about 4, and reading, I would hold the book 2 inches from my face. And I just always remember just really loving the worlds that were open to me inside a book.
And is that still the case?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What do you enjoy most of all about reading now? What type of books would be on your nightstand?
I still like fiction. Like I love everything that Isabel Allende's ever written, Louise Erdrich, Jim Harrison. I love things that are well written. I love a beautiful turn of phrase. I love a well-chosen word. And I also really enjoy natural history stuff. So like currently I just got a book about lightning bugs. And I have books about the monarch migration and, trees and leaves and things like that.
What were your parents encouraging you to do when you were a child and the kind of things you might have been enjoying at school?
God, okay, school was, once again, I was very socially awkward and I was very skinny and didn't have glasses. And then I had Coke bottle glasses. So I was tormented by the other kids. So school's not a happy memory. But what ended up happening is I hyper focused on reading. And when I was in grade school, I read every single book in the library. And that's not hyperbole. I read every book.
Did you enjoy writing as well then?
I did. And I still do. Yeah.
Where did the images come in then? Did you have a camera as a child?
No, did not have a camera as a child. My mom, I think about us as children, like my mom wasn't a reader, but she would take the 3 of us by city bus to the Carnegie Library, like the big, beautiful one in Oakland. And I would get out a stack of 10 books. And once a week, we'd go to the library and take those 10 books back, get 10 new ones. And then the other thing that she did was she got me and my sister into dancing. And so those were, 2 things that my mom really encouraged. which were great because honestly, dancing, it's like you learn coordination and movement, and it sets you on a good path to be healthy and fit for your entire life.
Did sports play a role in your childhood?
Oh, hell no. Hell no. I was tortured by sports. I was absolutely, once again, going back to I couldn't see when I was a kid. So you think about, when you have like toddlers, you throw a ball at them and they catch it and they laugh and then they throw it back. People would throw a ball at me and it would hit me. And I'd be like, oh, this is not a fun game. So that continued on when I was older. And I still remember being forced to play baseball. And, I'd be put in left field, which I was 100% fine with. And I would spend my time like looking for bugs and lizards and looking for flowers and just counting the seconds until I could leave the baseball field.
Did you draw or paint these bugs when you were a kid?
No, I don't remember doing that. I mean, I would like all kids, I would, draw and whatnot, but it was never like an obsession. For me, it was more about being outside and observing and just, watching the change of seasons and different things that were out there. And yeah.
Did animals play a role in your young life?
Not so much. I mean, we would always have a dog and, I enjoyed having the dog around, but it was never an obsession or anything.
How would you reflect now on your relationship with your parents and indeed your grandparents? Because often we lean towards one or the other, don't we?
Yeah. That's kind of a tough one. My parents are interesting people. I know at one point my mom, kind of half joked that there must have been a mix up at the hospital because I definitely did not fit into my family. Like, not even a little bit.
And even with your siblings?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So how did that make you feel being the black sheep of the family?
Well, I'm not so much the black sheep. I'm just like I don't even, well, I guess when I was older, maybe, but I was just so different. It's like I love the outdoors and, my mom loved makeup and jewelry and, just and my sister liked that stuff too. So it's like I just didn't fit in. I was like, the odd man out, which, eventually I found my tribe.
At what point did you find your tribe? Was it when you were at the Art Institute?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the way I got into photography is that I became the editor of the yearbook at the high school that I was in. And we needed pictures of this basketball game and there was nobody to go and get them, but we had a camera. So I'm like, well, how hard could it be? So I took the camera and I went to the basketball game and it turns out it was kind of difficult. Like I didn't know you had to focus and I didn't know you had to expose. So little by little, I learned how to focus the camera and expose the camera. And it definitely resonated with me.
Well, the camera nerds that are listening will want to know what that camera was.
That was the Pentax. Dude, that's a good question. It was a Pentax, so it would have been like a K1000 or something.
Yeah, blast from the past.
Yeah, and when I bought my own camera, the first camera I got was the Canon AE1.
And at what point then did you really connect with photography and realizing, that capturing images was going to be it for you?
Well, it's like I had a point and shoot, and so I always enjoyed it, but I didn't really think so much about it. But once I had a camera that I had to like be thoughtful about it, how do I focus this thing and how do I expose? And it really sparked something inside of me, and it became my new obsession.
So there was no question what you were going to do in college then, and you got an associate degree in photography.
Yeah, I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and it was awesome. It was really great. I had a group of people who had the same passion as I did. And so for the first time in my life, I was surrounded by people where I wasn't the odd man out, where I wasn't the strange one, where I did fit in. And it was great. It was fun.
So was socializing becoming easier then?
Well, I had friends in high school, and I still to this day am super close with my best friend from high school. And but going to art school and being surrounded with people who all were thinking creatively, it wasn't, oh, you can't play sports, so we're not interested in talking to you, or what I mean. It was like everybody had like so much going on, like. And the cool thing about the school is it wasn't just photography. There were people in the visual arts, and it was an entire building full of people who loved creating. And to me, that was the best possible place to be.
So tell us more about art school.
So art school, honestly, Chris, art school was like 2 extra years of kindergarten. It was absolutely perfect for me. Like every day was creating and learning and being around people who were just so full of creativity and just so interested in doing things. It was just great. And in terms of like music and whatnot, I had a friend who would give me shit about my musical taste because he was into jazz, but I loved like Supertramp and Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones and Pink Floyd. So pretty mainstream stuff.
Is music important to you now?
I like music, but I'm not a music person. I don't play music, and I enjoy it when I listen to it. But for the most part, like my favorite music is when I wake up in the morning and I open the window and I hear the dawn chorus of birds. That's my music.
That's music to your ears.
Music to my ears. Or being next to a river and hearing the sound of the water and looking and seeing what the water is doing. Like that's music to me. Or the way the wind sounds when it goes through the leaves in the trees. That's music.
So let's move on from art school then. You obviously got into adventures in a big way by shooting this adventures. And there's more stories to come I want to get to about when you became a videographer and started shooting some fun stuff. What were those early memories? Accidents and incidents included.
It's like I kind of got into it in a backwards way. When I was in school, like the video program was almost non-existent, and it was something that I never aspired to shooting video. I wanted to be a still photographer. But I got the job shooting pictures on the river, and I did that for 2 years. And then I kind of did a deep dive down the outdoor recreation rabbit hole. And that's where I first really dealt with sexism in a very big way. Because that in the early 80s, the world of whitewater was men outnumbered women by 20 to 30 to 1. And so I became a river guide and ski patroller and ski instructor, and I would do still photography jobs on the side. And then when video cameras became small enough to put in a Pelican box and to put into a kayak, then I became a video kayaker.
And what were your earliest sort of adventures, big adventures and productions combined?
Well, I had a friend who started an adventure race company, kind of like the Ray Galois or the Eco Challenge. And she asked me to video their first big adventure race. It was a 350-mile start to finish, nonstop race that involved hiking, kayak or river section, a rock section, and mountain biking. And so I went and scouted the whole course, and I went and shot her race by myself. So I had all of the maps. I had a 4-wheel drive truck. I pretty much figured out where the interesting things were going to happen. Where's the scenery good? Where's the place where the contestants were going to have difficulties in deciding navigation? Where were they going to be going up the rocks or down the river? So I did that race, and I discovered something about myself that I didn't know before, and that's that I have a capacity to work through sleep deprivation. And I absolutely loved shooting the adventure races. And so I shot pretty much every race that her company did. And then there was another company called, I can't remember the name of the company, but their race was called the Appalachian Extreme. And it turns out that 3 of the races that I shot were qualifying races for the Discovery Channel Adventure Racing World Championship in Switzerland. And those guys contacted me because they wanted to use some of my footage for background packages with some of the athletes. And I said that they were welcome to use my footage if they would hire me to be one of the camera operators. And they did. So prior to that, I had only done smaller jobs. I'd worked for a company out of Canada that did a show called Ride Guide on Outdoor Life Network. And so I shot bike races for them in West Virginia. I did one in Michigan. I did a shoot for them in Costa Rica called La Ruta de los Conquistadores. And that's a 3-day mountain bike race that starts on the west coast of Costa Rica and ends on the east coast of Costa Rica. So I did a bunch of work with those guys, and I did other shows on Outdoor Life Network. There's a show called Canoe and Kayak that I did segments for, and I got to do like some smaller shows for like cable TV, like different like little dating things and whatnot. So I'd done smaller shows, but I'd never done a big show.
So the first big show was what?
The Discovery Channel Adventure Racing World Championships.
Okay, that was the big one.
Yeah, that was in 2001.
What was really making you tick and thinking, okay, this has grabbed me now. This is all I want to do?
I think that probably started when I worked at West Virginia Public Broadcasting. I worked for them for 4 years doing, well, it was a small affiliate for public broadcasting. So you did all of the things. I would produce my segments. I would have to shoot my segments. Then I'd go back and I'd edit my segments. And then I'd be in the studio rolling PedCam. And for me, trying to figure out how things go together and how to tell a story, I just absolutely loved the storytelling aspect of it. It just really sparked me.
And you've done a series called Motor Maidens about a group of women's motorcycle riders traveling across the US. How did that come about?
That came about from a post I saw on Women Working in Reality TV on Facebook. And Women Working in Reality TV was started by Tessa Peschow. I'm probably mispronouncing your last name, but it's a group for women who work in the reality TV space. And one of the things that people do is they post needs for jobs. And I saw a posting, and it was looking for a camera operator who's comfortable in the outdoors. And I was like, oh, that's me. And so I sent Candace an email, just, saying that I was interested and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Candace Cobat, and she hired me. It was awesome. I mean, it was, the entire cast and crew are all female, and that's the first experience that I've ever had with that. Actually, the only experience.
The only experience when it's been an all-female crew.
All-female cast, all-female crew.
And what year would that have been?
That was 2022.
Talk a little bit about some of the other productions, because it hasn't just been outdoors. You've been indoors as well.
Oh, God, yeah. The first, big show that let me shoot was The Bachelor. And that was in 2004. So I had gotten on that because a friend of mine, actually a guy who I dated, who I met on a different shoot, got me hired as an AC, it was a little bit frustrating because I had already been shooting for 8 years. And then to take a step back and be an assistant, it was a little bit of a challenge. Because back then, the beauty of reality TV is you could move up very quickly. You could be a PA driving an 8-passenger van, and 2 weeks later, someone puts a camera in your hand just because they needed someone, there was a lot of opportunity for advancement in the early days of reality television.
I'm bound to ask you that back in 2014, you were camera operator on Dating Naked. You have to tell us what that was like.
Oh, well, honestly, the pilot that we shot for that was one of my favorite jobs that I've ever done, because it was like, trying to figure it out. And it was a very small crew. And we were on a private island in Honduras. And it was just really interesting because it was a really good combination of people on the crew and the cast for that pilot. It was funny and weird and awkward, but then okay. And it was just really interesting, thinking of, how are we shooting this? And, how do we make this not weird? And it was a really fun shoot.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be challenging. There were considerations you wouldn't otherwise have.
Exactly.
Well, going back a few more years, you did 41 episodes on Jersey Shore as the camera operator.
I did.
That was a big shoot. 3 years.
Yeah. I did season 1 through 4. And then I went back and I popped in for some family vacation ones, and I did the dating spinoff. But it was interesting, Chris, because when it started, it was like nothing like it had been done before. Now you have the Kardashians, and you have this, and you have that, and there's lots of other shows. But at the time, basically, when we shot Jersey Shore, it was definitely an experiment because it was treated very hands off. People were always like, "Oh, that's scripted." And I'm like, it is not scripted. It is definitely not scripted. It's like the least, in the early years, it was definitely the least interfered with. Like, we, as a crew, they wanted the producer, Sally Ann Salzano, had wanted them to bond with each other. So we weren't allowed to talk with the cast. We weren't allowed to interact with the cast. And we weren't even supposed to say our names of the other people that we were in the room with in front of them. So the cast didn't know our names. They didn't, they were just, it was just them. If they walked out a door and you didn't catch it, you didn't catch it. So it was very hands off. And it was just really interesting because at the time, Seaside Heights was just a grimy, rundown little beachside town that had seen better days, and nobody really knew what we were doing. And it was interesting. So the first season, the last few days that we were shooting, I still remember being on the rooftop, and the cast is like, "Yeah, we're going to do this next year, and we're going to da 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 da," and the whole crew were all like, "Yeah, next year you're going to be back living in your parents' basement. Like, nobody's going to watch this." So proving that I'm very, very, very bad at knowing what's going to succeed and what's not going to succeed.
I want to take us back to what Gretchen referred to about you saving someone's life that you were shooting. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. I think she might have been mistaken with somebody else.
And there was a chase
I'm gonna have
scene.
to ask her.
Yes, and there was a chase scene, she said.
That I definitely remember. That wasn't like, that was not me saving anybody's life. That was, I was on a show called Kings of Pain, and we were shooting in South Africa. And when we went to scout the location, I didn't, I didn't know then what I know now. So, when we went to the location we were shooting, number one, there were massive hippo footprints. And I was like, oh, cool, look, hippo footprints. This is awesome. And, so I was really excited about the hippo footprints. And I shot a picture, like, here's my foot, here's the hippo. God, his foot's so big. And we were going to be shooting a scene on this river. And the cast was going to find, I'm putting find in air quotes, this monitor lizard. And so we had a wrangler that was with the lizard, and it was at a certain point on the river. And, we had two boats. We had one for the cast and one for the crew. And we were on this river, and not only were there hippo prints, but there was a very healthy population of Nile crocodiles. So I was nervous about that because back when I worked on the river, an acquaintance of mine was killed by a Nile croc, and they never found his body. And so I already was like afraid of crocodiles. So, but anyway, so we go to shoot the scene, and we have two boats. The cast gets in their boat, and they're figuring out how to drive the thing. And we get in our boat, and there's definitely too many people in our boat. We've got, three cameras and audio and producers and the boat driver and the AP taking notes and whatnot. So we get into this overloaded boat, and we start down the river, and we're doing like just a little daylight section. And while we're out there, we see some hippos along the shore, and I'm like very excited to see the hippos. I'm like, oh, look, hippos. And they come up and they go down, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. And then we come back in and we wait for nightfall because the scene was going to take place at night. So we load into our boats. And like I said, I am a massive wimp about apex predators. And particularly in that location, I was concerned about the crocodiles. And we push off of shore, and we go a little distance away. And the guys who are in the cast were really comfortable around wildlife. That was their specialty. And one of them sees a baby croc in the water, and he picks up this baby croc and he's holding it, and he's got a mic on, so I could hear the distress signal from the baby croc. And I'm just, put the croc down, just put it down, just put it down. I was like already starting to get nervous. And so eventually put the croc down, and they get ready to leave, and they had drifted against the shore. And so the guy who was driving the boat tries to back up, and all of a sudden the back end of the boat rears up out of the water. And I was like, oh, they must have hit a log or something. Well, it turns out it was a hippo. And so it's like, holy shit, a hippo. And so we all take off, the opposite direction of the hippo. Now, at this point, I don't know anything about hippos. I just know, I think they're cute. I'm excited. It's wildlife. But what I've since learned is they can travel really quickly underwater. So really quickly. I also learned they're herbivores. I also learned that they hate people. I also learned that hippos have killed more people than lions have. So these are all things that I learned in retrospect. So we take off downstream, opposite direction from where we needed to go to get to the monitor lizard. And we're there, trying to sort out, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Like, where do we do? Do we go back? Do we go? And while we're sitting there, I'm looking out into the water, and all of a sudden I see bubbles. So I point my camera at the bubbles, and sure enough, here comes a hippo, and the hippo starts charging at us. And the cast is like, what do we do? And, the boat driver from our boat is like, get the bleep out of here. And so, we turn tail and start going in the opposite direction. And, we're the lead boat, and honestly, the cast was in more danger than we were because they were the boat that was closest to the hippos. But we eventually got to shore, and I was really happy to not be on the river.
So that would be one for the memoir then.
That was an exciting evening. I learned to fear hippos more than alligators or crocodiles. So
I want to take you back. I think it was prior to that you shot in Alaska, the bush people. for 6 episodes of that in 2018. Tell us about that completely different environment.
Well, at that point, the Alaskan Bush people had the mom, the matriarch of the family, had cancer, and so they were actually not in Alaska at that point in time. They were near Palmer Lake in Washington State. So that was, honestly, I really enjoyed working with them. They're interesting people. It was a lovely experience, but they were in the process of setting up their new homestead in Washington State. And so the road that we were on wasn't exactly finished. And so every day on our way up to the property was just an adventure. And a lot of days we didn't even make it up there because the road was just such a disaster that, vehicles would get, bogged down in mud and have to get pulled out. And it was interesting because, look, like I said, I haven't worked on a lot of shows where the entire crew's a woman, helmed by women, but the matriarch of the family preferred female camera operators to male camera operators. So we were all women camera operators except for one guy, Rob Hashey, who was just an absolute pleasure to work with. So that was interesting. That was my first experience with a crew that it was a requirement that they preferred female to male.
The scene is changing a little bit. There are more women, and there are women like Gretchen and others who are fighting for more women on set. What do you see as the biggest hurdles for that? Why are the men feeling threatened by the women?
Honestly, for the longest time, the world was their oyster. There was, it was when I still remember I did a show called Gone Country in Nashville, and it was, there were only 4 camera operators and a DP and 3 camera operators. And I still remember walking onto set the first day, and it's like, people just giving me a weird look and this and that and the next thing. And since I was a smaller person, I shot on the tour bus because it was easier for me to move around. And so every time that we were shooting in the tour bus, I was the person shooting there. And the guy that was driving the bus, super nice guy, just really chill with me. At the wrap party, I found out that he wasn't just a bus driver. He was the owner of this company that owned all of these tour buses. Like pretty much every musician that ever toured probably rented one of his vehicles. And he came up to me and he said, when you showed up on set, I looked at you and I said, what's that little girl going to be able to do? And you know what? You shot circles around every other guy. And I really appreciated his comment. Like, I really appreciated that. And now there is probably, back then people had never seen a female camera operator. Like, I was like a mythical creature, it's like people had never seen that. But now everyone who is on a set at one time or another has now seen that it's no different. Like, there are good camera operators and there are bad camera operators, and it doesn't have anything to do with your sex. There are camera operators who have great endurance, and there are camera operators that get tired after 10 minutes. And that doesn't have anything to do with your sex. And for me, I love that anyone who is a woman who is entering this business now, no one's going to look at you and say, I don't think you can do this because you're female. I don't think that happens now. Or if it does, it's really rare, because on every set, someone has seen a woman excelling at being a camera operator, or excelling at being an audio person, or excelling at being a grip or an electric. And I really believe that it's a different world that women are coming into now.
What are you working on next?
Finding work. Right now, the industry is in a really weird place, and one that I never thought I'd see, especially, leaving the pandemic, things got super busy in 2001 and in 2022. Like everyone was just busy, busy, busy. And it was like, oh my God, it's like, we're back. Everything's just going to stay like this. But last year with the writer's strike and with the actor's strike, unlike the first time that there was a writer's strike, there was a writer's strike in the beginning of my career with unscripted stuff, and it got very busy because companies focused on unscripted because they're like, oh, we don't have writers, so we do unscripted. Well, I guess myself and a lot of other people had just presumed that with the writer's strike of last year that the same thing would happen, that it would get busy. But instead, the opposite happened, and it got really slow. I was fortunate. I had things lined up. I work on Love is Blind, so I did that, and I did 2 seasons of that during all that mess, and I'm not really sure what's going on right now, but I've never seen it this slow. And it's not just me, it's, lots of other people. I mean, people are in dire straits.
But one of the other things that you've done to keep yourself busy in your recent years is design your own house in West Virginia there.
I did.
Yeah, tell us about that, why you had the desire to do that, because that's a big project.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated with buildings and structures, and when you go into a place, like, what is it about this room that makes me feel good or bad or whatever? And so I always wanted to design and build my own house. So I had bought a piece of property in West Virginia that already had a house on it and had a single wide trailer on it. And there's enough room to build one more house. And so I basically did that. I drew it out on graph paper, and then I found an architect who would turn it into blueprints for me. And I acted as the general contractor, and I built the house. And then to be able to supplement my income, I turned my old house and the single wide trailer into Airbnbs. So I went from homeless person to owning my own neighborhood.
You certainly did. Any ambitions left in that regard?
Yeah. I bought a piece of property that's across the creek from me, and I have a design to build a house there. And, hopefully that I can manifest that.
Well, you obviously enjoy a lot of different things. What is the best time for you if you had a weekend off? What would that be?
Well, when I'm home, I am fortunate in that my nearest neighbor is a national park. And so I've got mountain biking trails. I just walk out my door, get on my bike, and I'm on mountain bike trails. And then I'm halfway between the put in and the takeout of a whitewater river. So I still love getting on the river and kayaking with friends. And I do volunteer work when I have time. And I teach my friends photography, my friends' kids photography, and things like that. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to be shooting a friend's child is graduating from grade school, and so I'm going to go shoot that, do some still photography.
Yeah, because you told me you're obsessed with shooting, so I'm wondering how much you do for fun in your spare time.
All the time. What's the saying? The best camera is the one that you have. And now everybody has a pretty remarkable camera in their hands. I've had like a number of point and shoots over the years. And it turns out that, if you've got an iPhone, you have a camera that has an amazing sensor and just a beautiful lens or 2 or 3 on it. And you can just get absolutely beautiful images just using your phone.
Yeah. Filmmakers are using just their phone now. I'm coming across more and more filmmakers who are just using their iPhone.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, Michel Gondry did that film, God, probably 4 or 5 years ago, that beautiful little film that he shot the entire thing on iPhone.
If you look back at your life now, Colleen, where you've come so far, what would you consider to be the major milestones, the turning points for you?
I think, the two biggest ones were discovering a passion for shooting, because that's something I never get tired of. It's really fulfilling. It's just, I I joke that it's my drug of choice. I'd rather shoot than have an alcoholic beverage or any other kind of drug. I get so much fulfillment, and I hit flow state with that. And it is my number one passion. And then the other thing was when Greg Green walked up to my booth in those muddy boots and offered me a job shooting on the river. And I got to see this entire world of the outdoors and just nature and being able to take deep dives in that. And then the third thing was being able to shoot for a show that one of the craziest moments for me was when I was visiting a friend of mine in San Diego, and we went to his brother's place, and we walked in, and on the TV was a show I'd shot. I mean, that was so cool to me. It's like, wow, check this out. Something I did, and total strangers are engaging with it and enjoying it. Like that was really special.
So what's left? What's on your bucket list?
Everything. I mean, there's so many things. There's so many things. I still love shooting, and I still want to be shooting. So I'm, looking for work, and, hopefully things will happen. The motorcycle show was supposed to happen now, but it got pushed till the fall. So I'll be doing that. And just, I love spending time with those women. It's just, they're interesting and they're fun, and they're 30 years younger than me. So I really enjoy spending time with them. And it's like keep shooting and keep building, and there's places in the world I haven't been to yet. So there's always something to look forward to.
Well, it sounds like there's lots more to come, Colleen, and it's going to be adventurous, and it's going to be fun too. Because you make your own fun, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm never bored.
If you choose a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
And you feel you've done that.
I really do. I feel very fortunate. It's like I know people who do jobs that they are miserable in. And I think, what a waste of a life.
Find your passion.
Find your passion.
Well, Colleen, thank you for sharing some of your passion with us here on the show this week. I really appreciate you taking the time.
And I appreciate you, Chris. I love being able to hear the stories of all the women that you've interviewed. I really enjoyed hearing Gretchen's, because I know her, but I learned so much more about her from listening to that.
And if you scroll down the show notes, you'll find a link to Colleen's IMDb and also her Instagram, as well as our Instagram at The Art Podcast. Do leave your comments and questions there, any suggestions for guests. And as always, if you prefer, you can email us directly at hollowellstudios@gmail.com. My thanks again to my guest this week, Colleen Laffey, and to you for listening. I'll be back next week with another talented woman from around the world of visual arts. So I do hope you'll join me then.